All right, great. So thank you everyone for joining our panel discussion on expanding access to nuclear medicine education. I'm honored to be here with such a distinguished panel of experts, especially our current president of the SNMMI, Julie Bolin. I really want to dive right into the conversation, but I think we should do some introductions first. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Sybil Nielsen. I'm the president-elect of the SNMMI, and I'm a nuclear medicine educator for about 17 years now. I'll let Julie go next. Go ahead, Julie.
Hi, folks. My name is Julie Bolin. I'm the current Technologist section president. I've been a nuclear medicine technologist for approximately 20 years. In the last 5 years has been as an educator, and I'm currently a program director.
Hi, so I'm David Gilmore. I'm the program director at the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. I know that's a mouthful, in Boston, Massachusetts. I've been in education for about 18 years. I currently do serve on the board of directors for the SNMMI and have been doing online education for about 4 years now.
Hi, everybody. Crystal Glasgow. I am a past president of the SNMMI TS, and I have been on the education side of nuclear medicine since February 2015. And before that, worked in a hospital as a nuke tech. And we do a little bit of everything. We do a little bit of distance, and we do some in-person. So happy to share what we have.
Okay, I'm Lisa Ross, and I'm the program director at Chattanooga State Community College. I am in my 28th year of teaching, so I've been involved in education and watched it evolve into now we're online as well, and have been for several years. And I'm the current Georgia tag for the Society of Nuclear Medicine.
Hi, my name is Summer Carey. I am the program director and assistant professor at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences, and I have been a technologist and educator for a total of 9 years so far.
Hello, I'm Sarah Gibbons. I'm the Nuclear Medicine Program Director at Guernica Academy of Medical Arts. I've also been a technologist and a radiation safety officer since 2016.
Hello, my name is Angela Weiler. I currently serve as the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse Program Director, and I've been in the nuclear medicine field since 2019.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining. So, Julie, I want to start with you. Tell us a little bit about your initiative to expand nuclear medicine education to underserved areas, and why is this important?
Currently there are only 68 accredited programs for nuclear medicine technology across the United States. And what that means is that there are several areas of this country where there is no educational access. Several states only have one program. There are also several states with no programs. And ultimately what this means is that there's educational access in very small communities, typically that would be more metropolitan areas. This lack of educational infrastructure really leads to communities that have no qualified and adaptable nuclear medicine technologists, and most importantly, access to care issues for our patients. So it's important that as we're thinking about moving forward as a profession and moving forward as a country, we need to look into home growing technologists in the areas in which we need these technologists. Ultimately, that's going to lead to more diversity. Patients are going to have access to care, and we're going to be more satisfied with the care that they receive. So as educators, we have an obligation to be able to reach out into some of these rural communities and underserved and underrepresented populations.
That is awesome. I really love this initiative. I think it is so important. So let's talk a little bit about strategy. Summer, can you share a little bit how you connect with underrepresented or rural communities, how you spark their interest in nuclear medicine technology?
So we are a online program, so that makes it nice for us to expand into those rural or underrepresented areas. Some ways that we do that is we partner up with different high schools or colleges, and pretty much we're just bringing awareness. I figured out a lot of people don't even know that we even exist. So it is nice for people to even know that this could be an option, and also that the need is there right now and that our program can go into those areas if needed.
Excellent. I totally agree with that. Lisa, so good to see you, Lisa. Can you talk to us how you engage with your local schools or community organizations to raise awareness about your particular program? And are there any partnerships that you have for recruiting?
Yeah, sure. We attend college and career fairs for our local high schools in areas where all of nursing and allied health at our college may have um, a need to have a presence, but we also then target areas where it's specifically to just nuclear medicine and us, and hit some outer areas. Like I'm going to one that's about 4 hours away this week, where we have clinic sites that we would like to fill. And so we go to attend those. We also teach classes, like attend the career classes and the health courses at the schools, and do a presentation on allied health. And we bring whatever we can as far as visual aids, and try to get the students engaged. We also, as far as the community, our affiliate hospitals also attend career fairs and to recruit for their facilities, and they will also distribute any flyers that we provide them, because they do like to promote the affiliations that they have with different colleges, so that students can kind of gear towards the right direction if they're coming from high school to where they may need to enroll. And I agree with Summer that it is that hardly nobody really knows a lot about our field. So just getting out there and getting the phrase nuclear medicine, and that it actually exists, to the high schools, whether it's through us, through clinical staff, word of mouth, or the career fairs that we do, or the colleges do, and then they provide our information.
It sounds like a real grassroots effort to identify the locations that nuclear medicine is needed, and then just going out and fulfilling that need. And that reminds me, Julie, I think you've talked a little bit about the career and technical education in high schools. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it relates to our workforce pipeline work?
Currently we're investigating and developing a career and technical education kind of collaboration with some of our local high schools. The one that we've most recently been speaking with is an institution called WestMed. And ultimately, we're trying to create a curriculum for them so that while students are in high school, they can not only take the necessary prerequisites for our program, but also have real, true marketable skills, so that while they're waiting on that wait list, they have opportunities for providing for their families. So some of the things that we've specifically discussed with them include a curriculum for like an imaging technologist assistant, or something along those lines. We'd like to include things like phlebotomy training, as well as patient care. So we're creating our workforce by going into some of these communities and letting students know that they do have access and options that they may not be aware of. And furthermore, whenever these individuals graduate from college, not only are they just ready for our programs, but they're probably going to be a bit more successful in those programs as well, because they'll have all of this pre-training, so to speak. And I think that several career and technical education schools are willing to form these different types of partnerships, specifically because of all of the Perkins grants that you get in the United States that goes along with career and technical education. So we can develop and create a workforce even while they're in school.
All right. Thank you, Julie, for that answer. I really think that the traditional model doesn't work as well as it used to. And it's important, if we want to reach these areas, that we do come up with new models. Angela, can you talk a little bit about how you ensure that outreach efforts are inclusive and accessible to diverse populations, maybe rural communities?
So it is very crucial that we start building a really strong relationship with rural schools to ensure that the counselors there, as well as the healthcare course educators, are aware of nuclear medicine career pathways. The first part starts off with educating. This then can include providing the opportunity to offer in-person or even virtual presentations. I often can do the presentations, or sometimes I can even find a technologist, or even one of my students gets involved and enthusiastic to share with previous high schoolers that they went with about the nuclear medicine field. Also, it's really crucial to provide flyers on nuclear medicine information, and making sure those flyers aren't just put in a desk, but also put in an area where students are going to see them, whether they're in a hallway or on a bulletin board, or even just in a little area where there's other radiology modalities advising and trying to recruit for their program as well. Often high schoolers also have a list of certain websites that they provide to students to do some career exploring, and it's crucial to identify those and make sure that nuclear medicine careers are included on those websites. Not only just included, but they're up to date and accurately describe what we're doing in our field. Many states also offer large healthcare career fairs and where they bring multiple rural area schools together, and making sure nuclear medicine has a face and a representation at those events are very important as well. Like I said, my personal favorite way to recruit is involving current students and even recent graduates, specifically from rural areas, and just connecting them with their previous classmates possibly, or even younger siblings. It makes the interaction way more personal. And now the rural areas, they have access to social media and the website. So something I like to personally do is create postings that my students can share in social media, and just sharing the great things that we're doing within the program and this what the field's doing can easily gain interest of students who are friends with them on social media, or even parents sharing with their fellow students and children as well. So outreach efforts in rural communities doesn't just come from academic institutions, but it also needs to come from healthcare organizations as well. And healthcare organizations can play a role in us setting up radiology open houses, even if they're a small, just getting them in there and seeing them excited about seeing the imaging equipment is the first step, or just inviting students to come job shadow in the nuclear medicine departments.
I love that you're utilizing technology to reach areas that wouldn't otherwise be accessible. The virtual meetings and utilizing the students to make that personal approach. I think that is great. Crystal, I think you talked about some outreach initiatives that you've been involved in. Can you tell us what you do to promote nuclear medicine technology?
Sure, absolutely. So at UAB, we are a master's level nuclear medicine program. So we will reach out to high school students and the community colleges, and also undergraduate students. So for the high schoolers, we actually will bring them in, usually in the summer, because it's a little bit of a slower semester for us. And we'll bring them in into our lab, and we start out just talking about radioactivity in general, and how this kind of relates to science and how it's everywhere. And they're usually a little surprised by that. We bring out the Fiesta ware, the antique watches, all the things. And they usually get pretty excited about that, just not realizing that, we're constantly around radiation. And then we can kind of move into, well, let's talk about how we can use this in medicine. And we'll show them our lab. We've got a gamma camera in there. We show them some pictures of different procedures. Those are always fun. And they usually are pretty interactive, and they ask a lot of good questions. Their counselors are also there with them. And so the counselors then take that back as well for information to share with future students. Now, for the other students, those that are at community colleges or undergraduates in the surrounding universities, I've actually made some connections with different professors. So anatomy professors, or professors in the kinesiology degree program, et cetera, et cetera. And what they do is sometimes they'll have a week or two here and there where they've got some downtime, and they can invite guest speakers to come in and actually come in and speak to those classes. And I always start out with a case study, and I've got a list of case studies that are, slightly edited to protect the identity of those they're about. But that usually gets them pretty excited, and they're all always geared toward that nuclear medicine kind of is the answer for them with both diagnostics and treatment. And that usually gets them pretty fired up. To those, I also will bring our t-shirts, because If you wear our t-shirt, other people might ask you, hey, why are you wearing a nuclear medicine t-shirt? They're like, oh, well, this lady came to talk to us about this weird thing called nuclear medicine. We give them our stickers because they like to stick those all over their laptops and water bottles. And we also give them a flyer as well, just to take with them. And we actually get a whole lot of folks that way, just people who are in their anatomy class, they're interested in medicine and in science, but just didn't know about us. And so case studies have been a really good way to kind of get them engaged and get them excited.
So, Crystal, those are some real tangible examples that all of us can use. But one thing that I hear from you is the excitement. And I think the excitement is so important. As an educator, one of the things I've always lived by is your students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And they can definitely hear that from you, Crystal. Thank you. Julie, I think you said you had some outreach initiatives at your institution. There's some recruitment.
You know, we've done different types of recruitment events where we invite prospective students as well as their parents into our institution so that they can see all of the different types of healthcare degrees that we offer, including the nuclear medicine degree. However, we just recently had a teacher day. So instead of inviting parents and their children, we invited STEM teachers that were middle school as well as high school. And remarkably, they loved this event. It was for middle school and high school students all across the greater Phoenix area, as well as some outlying regions. And they had an opportunity to meet with program directors and clinical coordinators of so many different types of programs. We also got to show off our lab spaces and have some interactive sessions. And at the end of it, one of the things that they said that just really resonated is it's not just parents who influence their children on what their child determines to go to school for. It's also the teachers, and the teachers are spending a remarkable amount of time with these individuals just throughout their career as a student. So they can help tap different individuals who might have just natural tendencies to go towards something that is anatomy and physiology based. We also had an opportunity to tell them about our clinical partners that offer tuition reimbursement opportunities. So not only did they find out about the educational offerings, but they also found out about ways in which they could pay for that education and career trajectory. So I thought that that was a little bit of a market that we needed to tap into was our teachers.
Yeah, and very important that you're talking to students as young as middle school. It's never too early. Okay, so let's shift gears just a little bit and let's talk about education delivery. So, Sarah, you're a distance educator. How can distance education address the shortage of nuclear medicine technologists, particularly in rural areas?
Yeah. Distance education allows individuals in these underserved regions to access nuclear medicine programs without relocating. So, really, what this approach does is it brings the program to them, delivering all of that didactic coursework online. And then the schools partner with clinical sites near the students' homes and will help facilitate that hands on clinical rotation, which really provides a convenient learning experience for the students. I will say that that flexibility opens up opportunities for these students who otherwise wouldn't have these resources available to move and attend these on-campus programs in urban areas. When students in these rural areas can obtain education and training without leaving their communities, they are more likely to remain in these areas post-graduation, which is going to help mitigate the shortage of nuclear medicine technologists locally. Distance education programs can quickly scale up to meet the increasing demands and also scale back when the needs of technologists decrease. So this adaptability allows programs to respond to market fluctuations and then quickly kind of get in the area and get out once that demand is met in a particular region.
Yeah, I found that it's very important in terms of reaching those areas because if we can't supply technologists to those areas, then those areas will no longer have nuclear medicine. And that's a real access to care issue. So, David, talk to me a little bit about some of the innovative approaches that you've used when you're facilitated active learning in an online environment.
So this is one area that I definitely have a lot of passion in, right? And I think there's a whole host of reasons why that is. For years, right, we have heard about student-centered learning. And I think that has been great. I think many individuals have struggled with, how do we pull that off? How does that look? How can we keep students engaged? But I think online, this really works well. And so the first thing we do is that all of our classes are synchronous online. So we don't have the traditional thought process of online being asynchronous. They really are with us at all times. And what that has allowed us to do, particularly after the first semester where we're really getting to know one another and do things, is really to be able to record all of our lectures ahead of time. Students have that, they can go back, they can refer to it, but it's setting those expectations up front to have already reviewed that material. So when we come to our synchronous classes, right, we're actually able to do things. We utilize Zoom here. What that allows us to do is to use the breakout rooms quite effectively. Myself, other educators were able to pop into those rooms once we give them an assignment to kind of work on based on what we've already recorded kind of in that lecture. And so then we can come back together as a group. We can present those, if we're doing case studies, we can present kind of the problems and so forth. But one of the things that we're doing each of these times, right, is mixing those breakout rooms up. So they're not the same group of people. They're not gossiping about what they did last night and things. They're really kind of, here's what we got to work on. Oh, you're in Maine. Oh, you're in Colorado. This is great. How are we learning from one another? Kind of with those. The other thing that we have done is move this idea of taking quizzes individually and making them maybe punitive or what is seen to be as punitive to some people, to having those also in the breakout room. So letting them work on the quizzes together, submitting that. And I think that really brings more conversation for the students as to, I thought it was this. Well, I think it's this because this. And so I think that has really elaborated this ability to kind of enhance interactive learning. And then we typically will bring the students together, not necessarily on campus, but to centralized locations about every 6 to 7 weeks, and do things that maybe doesn't lend itself as well yet online. And that is certainly labs, which I'm sure we will talk more about, but also things like research case study presentations, maybe hearing from thought leaders that are in the area in the field where we can kind of bring them together. So that's kind of our approach to this concept of active learning online.
Yeah, thank you for those thoughts. And I used to be an opponent of online learning, but now that we have all of these strategies that we can do, I've found that I almost have more interaction with my students in the virtual environment than I do having them in the classroom with me.
Agreed.
All right, Summer. How about some strategies that can enhance, how your educational institution works with clinical sites to ensure a quality internship experience for your students?
The first thing when I hear that question, really the clear communication channels. We visit each site in person, and then also we conduct many meetings over Zoom or even phone calls, whatever best fits the site itself. I really do like having a dedicated clinical supervisor, so it's like a point of contact. So if anything arises, it's really easy to contact that one person. And one thing we always tell them is we really do value their input. So every time we meet, I always come with the book. I'm like, what are the good? What are the bad? Where can we improve? To always make sure we are growing. Each clinical supervisor, we always give them kind of a special training over expectations over themselves, but also the students. And I think having that good relationship with that clinical supervisor, but also all of the technologists, I think is really key, because if they're happy, they're going to for sure treat your student well. And so I have that open door policy, and I'm just really one phone call away. So if there's anything ever, they can send me a text message. And so I try to have that open, clear communication.
Yeah, I think the relationship between the program and the clinical sites is probably one of the most important in terms of having a high quality program. And many of our rural institutions are really happy that we're reaching out to them finally, because it used to just be the big hospitals would get students. So that brings me to Angela. Talk to me about how you structure your internships so your students get a wide range of clinical experiences, and how do you handle placement in rural areas?
At my program, it's a bachelor's program, and when I discuss bringing in more virtual, uh, sorry, restart, more virtual learning versus in-person learning, my students were very hesitant at first restructuring the program. They still wanted in person but they could see the value of virtual learning. And then they were super excited when I announced that bringing in virtual learning could also open additional clinical sites and more clinical experiences, such as seeing real healthcare facilities and the different patient populations that come along working in those healthcare facilities. So the way I had to restructure my curriculum is becoming more front loaded, meaning more didactic coursework in the beginning, which made it possible in the sense that they're here on campus for the first year of that bachelor's program, their junior year, and they're here for about a year, but then they go to their clinical internship locations for about a year as well. So they're not moving back and forth. They can find one certain location within that clinical internship. But when I find that clinical internship, I would call it a site, but it's more of a location. And within that region and that location, I usually like to find a large urban facility as well as a few rural communities that I can send a group of students to that region, that clinical site area, and have them rotate through between all those clinical sites. So I can increase my student enrollment within my program, but also go into areas that wouldn't otherwise see students and also get all the additional clinical possibilities and observations.
That is excellent. Lisa, I know you also have clinical sites in a lot of different areas. What strategies do you use to build these long-term relationships with clinical sites that are in more rural settings?
We try to stay in contact with them, and have them participate with us, with the students, uh, as much as they can. We have them also go out to the high schools and talk, and kind of get them involved in the recruitment process as well, to kind of get some ownership of getting the students in there, as well. As far as the high schools themselves, and building a relationship, we try to target the health occupation focused high schools that we have here in the area. And we actually have a faculty member on one of the boards for the as an advisor for the one of the health occupation schools, and we're open to being a member of other boards if we were invited, and we you know are open to that as well. We have the students, when they have the on-campus day, we make sure that we're present to be able to be there when they do come on campus to show them what we are able to show them in our lab, or take the Geiger counter and kind of like Crystal did with the case study and the Geiger counter and the radioactive jewelry and things like that, and showing them that, and try to get them, because if they have fun while they're there, they're going to go back and they're going to talk about what a good time they had, and then it's going to kind of grow and hopefully spread the news. Number one, that nuclear medicine exists, because not very many people overall have actually heard of us, which is one of our hugest recruiting problems, I think. But I think getting an advisor on the board was a definite plus. And when your college has those on-campus days, be present, participate, and get your program name out there, and try to make it interactive so the students have a good time while they're there. And then they'll take that back, a positive on nuclear medicine and their experience, briefly as it is.
That is so important, getting the high schools involved. And because you're right, we still have a hard time getting people to be aware of nuclear medicine. However, I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was a Pluvicto commercial during one of the football games. So it gives me goosebumps to think about, but we have commercials now. I think that's going to ultimately help us as well. Okay, Sarah, talk to me about some of the gaps in current distant education offerings for nuclear medicine and how these can be addressed with some solutions.
Yeah. I really think a key gap in this distance education world is the limited availability of online nuclear medicine specific labs. So, hands on experience with equipment is a critical component for nuclear medicine training, and teaching that online didactically before the students go to clinic has been really challenging. So, there's been some innovative solutions that have been emerging to kind of bridge that gap. One such approach is kind of this creation of custom built virtual labs that allow students to simulate nuclear medicine procedures as well as interact with the equipment in a dynamic and really immersive way. So, our educators have been taking photos and videos directly from like a real life nuclear medicine department and then embedding those into this interactive online lab platform. And this really enables the students to kind of explore and understand these complex processes remotely. And it provides a far more engaging and in depth experience when you compare that to like a static image on a PowerPoint slide. So, the creation of these virtual labs has significantly enhanced our students' understanding and better prepares them for their clinical rotations. And recognizing this as a key need, the SNMMI Educators Committee is now actively developing initiatives to offer these interactive labs to program directors, addressing this important gap in nuclear medicine distance education.
Thank you, Sarah, for saying that. Julie, I think you were the one at the Educators Forum to give us those ideas on this platform. Can you talk a little bit about how you use this platform in your classroom?
You know, I'm blessed to have amazing faculty and collaborators. And this really was a product of two of my faculty who developed a lab simulation utilizing a 360-degree camera, but it can also just be used with just a typical pano. And what we're able to do is really embed content within specific icons through this lab simulation that allows students to have the lab experience and feel like they're in lab with us, but they can do it while they're at home. You can create embedded within this content specific videos. You can create almost like escape room scenarios where they have to select things correctly and able to be able to get out of the escape room. So there's interesting ways in which we can use gamification and other practices that really allow our students to feel like they're in the classroom with us, but from their home. And I think that we really have to consider options such as this so that we're training the students with that didactic education to really prepare them for the clinical setting. And this opens us up to having students who don't meet that traditional format, who can actually, stop their work life to be able to come into the classroom or, move away from their children, right? So that they can attend some of our programs. So by having some of these different embedded content and collaborating with each other and all using the same platform, we're just building content that not only we can share with each other, but also hopefully share with other educators because we're all in this together. We want patients to have access to care and we want quality technologists. And I think that educators specifically are very highly collaborative. And what's good for one of us is good for all of us.
I think that is so important. One, that we all collaborate and we kind of help each other because educating today is much different than it was even 10 years ago. And I tell people all the time, I can't do today what I did 10 years ago. I wouldn't be successful. So we have to come up with these innovative approaches in order to engage our students. And so they feel like they're really doing the things that they would be doing in an in-person classroom. All right, Crystal, back to you. What kind of tools or platforms are you using to deliver some content in a distance or hybrid environment?
Yeah, so the pandemic was really terrible, right? It was a really hard time for everybody in the entire world. But I think if we can find any silver lining, it's that we were all kind of forced to get with the program, for lack of a better word. And all of these tools started to become better, more defined, and making it easier for the student to learn in a distance format. And so we have suddenly have all these tools at our disposal, and even some of them that we were already using have got all these new features. So at UAB, mainly what we use is Zoom, right? And Zoom is really a good tool because it's easy to use. Students don't necessarily even have to have their laptop if they had a tablet or a phone, even. And I know for some communities sometimes that might be all they have access to at that moment, but it's easy. It can go back and forth between all of the devices. And also we use Canvas at UAB, and Canvas seamlessly integrates Zoom into their system. And then it also has a lot of other tools. So I've heard some people talk about, that they prefer synchronous over asynchronous. And I do too. I prefer to everybody get together at the same time. But there are times that asynchronous learning makes sense and it works. And so we have some courses like that. And I think if you are going to be asynchronous, you have to make sure that it feels like everybody is still kind of together. And so we have had lots of discussion with our instructional design team to make sure that everything is seamless within Canvas and kind of directs the student where to go, so everybody's kind of flowing in the same pathway, even if they're not on at the same time. We've also utilized a tool called Go React. Go React enables them to upload their presentations and be able to interact with each other. And it'll even stamp it, when the comment was left on a particular part of the presentation, and they can communicate that way. And that's done asynchronously, but they can get on and interact in a really cool way. And that also seamlessly fits in with our Canvas learning management system. So those are kind of the ones that we mainly use. But if you have access to Canvas at your institution, there's a lot of tools in there that I think people just aren't aware of. So if you've got some instructional design specialists at your college or university, you need to tap into those resources because they can do some really cool stuff.
I agree. There is a learning curve that we've all experienced because the technology is outpacing my learning curve. So, Summer, your program has been online for quite some time, and it's probably changed. Right? You have pre-COVID versus post-COVID. Things have changed. Can you talk to us how you ensure that you get the same level of interaction with your students in the online environment compared to a traditional classroom?
So we are fully online, and just like many of you, we do conduct our classes over Zoom. So we record our lectures and have it ready for them at all times. One thing we do during orientation week is we do bring everyone actually to Little Rock for only 1 week before they go back to their hometown where they're going to be there for the rest of the year. And this is a good opportunity because we all get close to each other. We go over expectations. They actually meet each other. They meet us in person. And then we kind of describe like everyone is the same. You have that same open door policy. If you need anything, we schedule a meeting. We have classes every Monday, so you get to see us live online. But one thing that I've incorporated since actually really from COVID is kind of check-ins, I call them, where I schedule meetings with students throughout the semester a few times just to check in, nothing more. Sometimes the meetings last 5 minutes. Sometimes they might last an hour, depending on the student. And it really is just to say, hey, I see you. Is everything all right? Is there anything that you need to progress throughout the year? And I've actually seen a lot of retention from that and satisfaction from the program. So we're keeping those check-ins throughout each semester. And then pretty much just telling each student from the very beginning that you're not alone. We do see you. I know it's online, but we really do see you, and we will guide you throughout the whole process. And I think that makes them feel good.
I agree. I think that those one-on-ones are so important. And many times they only last about 5 minutes. But I have found having those one-on-ones, sometimes students, they keep something and they wait until that one-on-one and then they're ready to have that conversation with you, whatever it is. Maybe they're struggling or, something like that. And so it gives them an opportunity to just, let you know how they're doing. All right. I know we've talked about this a little bit, talking about online labs and that kind of thing. David, can you talk to me about your course a little bit and how you have these labs and in an online environment and how virtual simulations work?
Yeah. So first of all, I think I could probably just echo everything that was just said, right? Because it's exactly, I think a lot of us are utilizing some of these same tools. I think Crystal articulated this quite well. Instructional design is your best friend, right? And so utilizing the learning management systems to their fullest potential is a great way to kind of start with that. We officially list our program as online hybrid. And so what that means is that while we are doing all of our classes synchronous, we do have this hybrid component. And it doesn't mean that everyone's going to have to come to class or figure out their traveling here. We have a lot of distance sites. We're based out of Boston. We cover all of the New England states. We also cover Colorado. And so we have 6 states. There's no way to ask them all to come to one location, but we do partner with other institutions to create those centralized locations. And for us, that's really important that we have a lab one day every 6 or 7 weeks. And what that allows us to do is, I think Summer talked about this, bringing them in for a week. It allows them to create their own community, right? It was one of the things that you might remember in many of our traditional programs, right? Students, they click with one another, maybe not the whole entire class. They want that feeling as much as they want online. They also want this personal connection. And so we as the faculty do move to these locations. At the moment, we have that centered in 3 different locations. We've partnered with, usually it's a university-based hospital in which we can do the labs there. We can also do group presentations, do case studies, have some kind of thought leaders presenting, particularly if there's something going on in that region that maybe is only applicable to them with that. But that is one way that we have created kind of this online simulation. The other piece, which it goes to the online and why we list our program as both, is that you've already heard from Crystal and some of the others talk about things like GoReact, ThingLink that Julie did, and I learned so much, Julie, from your faculty this summer on doing that and now utilizing that as well. But there's also a lot of other programs that many other professions have used for a really long time that we've not necessarily tapped into. Some of the work that I've been doing with Sarah, your team, and Sybil as well, right, is programs like Simtex. But it's utilizing those to what they used to use them for in patient care-based activities, but now talking to these groups and expanding them into nuclear medicine. And I think Sarah articulated this really well. We have to produce more of this simulation in nuclear medicine specific programs. And it's great. We're all continuing to do these and sharing with one another, but we really need to move it out of vendor specific language and more to what's the concepts. Understanding count rate with distance doesn't really matter what camera and what technology they want to use with it. It's the concept that understands. And so I think that's really exciting piece that all of us on this call and others are really vested in continuing to make that work. So I use both the virtual and the simulations for online for those students, but we also have partnered with our academic institutions for clinical sites to also expand on that. And we as faculty travel to those locations for that.
Very, very good, David. I find it exciting and intimidating at the same time. So I'm excited to try all these new things and embed them into everything, but I'm also a little bit intimidated because there's so much. And a lot of this requires a lot of upfront work to get ready. So I just have one last question for Angela. I was thinking about this. With placing students in rural areas, how do you ensure that they're getting a quality clinical education?
So it first starts off with making sure that students are being provided with more training materials, such as procedure and processing videos. Many of the students go into this field in the sense that they are visual learners and also hands-on learners. So trying to figure out a way to combine the two was the first step. And so something that I've come up with and used within my program is actually creating interactive videos that students can watch during their clinical times in rural areas. Whenever they have free time, if they possibly have free time, they can play this video and then all of a sudden a question pops up, and it's usually like a problem solving or a scenario question. So it's something they maybe wouldn't experience very much so in the clinical field, but one time or many times within their career further on in the many years, they're going to experience it. And so, in order to prepare them for this, we created these little scenarios. Some of them are video, but in some of my clinical instructors like to be the actor involved and they like to be more hands-on with that when they're available too. So there's the good mixture of both, but providing them to also just case scenarios that they wouldn't rather foresee in their areas just because of the patient population or just the equipment. It can go from procedures to cleaning up a radiation spill to working with the cameras, no matter what kind of camera it is. When it comes to this, it's been going very well. I mean, the military has been doing this for decades when it comes to real life case scenarios. So we might as well apply it to nuclear medicine education as well. There's also the possibility, and hopefully, as we see in the future, using more lab simulation software as it starts to come out, because that is a major need so far as well. Having students enroll in urban clinical settings, my students compare and contrast. They meet weekly, synchronous, and they just talk about their clinical experiences. So one student might experience something else at one clinical site, and they can discuss and communicate with the other students on what they learned, or maybe they would have gone at that problem in a different way for a scenario. There's many ways to address things. As well as something I always tell my students is, even though if they're learning in a rural area, I tell my students to go to the clinical sites where they're going to be comfortable and most excited to learn. That's where they're going to be more excited to learn and also get the best quality. If they're not comfortable, they're not going to learn. And some students learn in a better in a rural area than a large city. And so going where they're going to succeed, and that's where they're going to get the best quality training in the end.
Excellent answer. I really, I agree with all of that in that we can have a quality education, even if it's not in a large academic institution. Rural settings and learning from each other is so important. And I feel like we can do that better with our virtual tools than, when I was in school. Once we started going to clinic, I never saw my classmates again. And so you don't get that learning from each other. So that's it for the questions. I thank you all for your dedication to this topic. I think it's very important. And Julie, I thank you for making this one of your top priorities during your presidency. Are there any final thoughts?
Sybil, I would just add that this is exciting. I agree with your comment. It's a lot of work up front, but it's also exciting work to do up front. And I think it's endless of where we're headed with this. And as we expand the profession, this is the future, not just of nuclear medicine, but of higher education. We're all moving in this direction. So I think it's an exciting time. Daunting, but exciting.
And I'll say lastly, we're not in it alone. Sometimes it can seem like we operate in silos, but one of the things that I love about our professional community, specifically amongst educators, is that we do collaborate not just with our respective faculty, but with each other as well. And each and every person can have different input that really yields quality product and better ways of doing things, because we're not ever going to have any more time than we currently have. So we have to figure out better ways of doing things, utilizing our resources appropriately. And I think that all of the educators are great through those collaborations that not only are appropriate for delivering quality education, but also things that help us just be better at our jobs and to do our jobs more efficiently.
Well, all I have to say is I'm honored to be a part of such an esteemed panel of educators, and you guys are awesome. And I'm going to be around for a little while longer to continue learning about all of the interesting tools and enhancements that we can continue to have a better experience for our students, which ultimately feeds into a better experience for our patients, better care.